Hi, good afternoon and welcome to The Welcoming. My name is Nikki Pittman and I'm the producer director of this event. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today. This event was born out of the desire to create a forum where we can collectively conspire to think and feel and discuss and act our way into creating a more just world. Inspired by my mother, who worked with the Fair Housing Council of the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, California for my entire growing up years, and angered by the Trump administration's rollbacks of the fair housing laws President Obama put in place, I felt compelled to do something. As I shared in my email and social media posts, the formidable Eve Ensler said, "Theater has an incredible capacity to move people to social change, to address issues, and to inspire social revolution." I hope that today's staged reading and the discussion that follows does just that. As most of you all know, Zoom is not the ideal format for the theater, and not having all the buzzers and bells as we are using a very regular Zoom room, there will probably be some glitches here and there. And so like life, we will work with what we have and make lemons out of technology. Now, without further ado, I invite you to go ahead and just turn off the videos on your screen so we can just simply be watching the actors as they perform. And I invite you to just sit down and definitely stand by for the welcoming. The scene, Azalea Oval, a short dead-end street. The time, one fateful morning and the following Tuesday afternoon, 1968. The stage is bare. The actress's pantomime movements whenever props are used. Lucy hurries in and knocks on a door.
Hi there, Lucy. Come on in for a cup of coffee and a low-cal donut.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't. I just came over to let you know there's a man, a stranger getting out of his car down at the corner. He's a real estate salesman.
How do you know he's a real estate salesman?
Because of the sign. He's carrying the sign that says "for sale."
Well, you never can tell about someone like that. I always keep my doors closed. Do you remember that man up in Toledo, the salesman, who almost stabbed somebody because she didn't buy his magazines?
You're absolutely right. You never can tell.
You sure you don't want a cup of coffee?
Well, I suppose I can stop for just a little while. I put a load in the washer when I came over here. I have a million things to do, but they can wait 10 minutes.
You sure you don't want a low-cal donut?
Oh, I really shouldn't. Oh.
They're only French crullers. They're mostly air.
Well, one won't hurt.
Oh, now I see the sign. I wonder whose house is up for sale.
I don't care who's going to sell. What I'm worried about is who is going to buy.
They freeze in their positions. Kathy has entered. She crosses to what would be the front of her house. She stands at a window, sprays it, wipes and polishes it, and she can, of course, see down the street.
Looks like a stranger coming down the street. Well, there's one thing about a dead-end street. You don't miss much.
If we didn't live on a dead-end street, it wouldn't matter to me who moved in.
A telephone rings.
Hello?
Hello, Kathy, this is Dorothy. Who's selling the house down on the Oval?
I don't have the least idea.
A real estate salesman just got out of his car. He parked on our corner and he's walking down the street.
How do you know he's a real estate salesman?
Because of the sign. He's carrying a sign, for sale.
Well, you never can tell about someone like that. I always keep my doors locked just in case. Remember that trash man who asked for a glass of water and came into my kitchen and sat down at the table? He talked about his girlfriends out in Los Angeles for 1/2 hour.
You're absolutely right. You never can tell.
Ethel enters. She is outside her house and begins raking leaves.
There goes Ethel. She's going to rake some leaves.
Oh, good old Ethel. She'll find out everything we want to know.
Oh, yes, you can always count on Ethel.
Is she weeding in the garden?
Uh, to Not this time. She's out raking leaves.
The four women ignore the walls of their homes and speak to the audience.
It's always a help to have someone in the neighborhood.
To ask all the questions.
And tell you all the answers you want to know.
To the questions you don't want to ask yourself.
Oh, I see you have a for sale sign. You must be a real estate salesman. Is there anything I can do to help you? You can see for yourself that Miss Redmond is selling.
I'll be sorry to see her go.
She's lived in that house all her life.
She told me it belonged to her parents.
It was the first one to be built on the street.
It'll be hard for her to move.
She's such a dear person.
She's always been so nice to all of our children.
I wonder why she's moving.
The salesman said that it's too difficult for her to keep the house. She needs so much repairing.
I wonder where she'll go.
Into an apartment as soon as someone buys.
It'll be hard for her to live in an apartment.
She loves to work out in the yard.
Well, she'll have to realize that life doesn't stand. Nothing can stay the same forever.
Lake Ridge Realty is handling the sale. Multiple listings.
Multiple
Multiple
listings.
What does multiple listings mean?
It means that the news that this house is for sale has been teletyped to every part of the city.
Every part.
The asking price is only $17,000.
Then she'll probably let it go for $16,000.
That's not much to ask for a house on this street.
It would be a nice house for a family with children.
The last thing we need on this street is more children. You're sure the salesman said 17,000?
Of course I'm sure. Call and check if you don't believe me.
Ethel, we believe you. It's just that the salesman might have gotten it wrong.
Go ahead and call. I don't care. I have his card here. Here's the telephone number.
Well, yes, for heaven's sakes, call.
Hello. I'm calling about a house that just went on the market. 1680 Azalea Oval. Yes, can you tell me how much you're asking? 17,000. Thank you very much.
17,000.
And she'll settle for 16,000.
Every other house on the street is worth more.
What'll that do to the value of ours?
I think that she should have told us about this before she put it on the market.
I'm surprised that she didn't tell us.
No, she's always kept to herself pretty much.
In fact, I think she's been downright unfriendly at times.
But why should she tell us her private business?
It would only have been common courtesy to let us know. I mean, we all have a great deal invested in these homes. We paid quite a price for ours when we bought it last year.
$22,000.
Oh, how did you know?
We know very well that everyone knows what everybody pays.
We put a lot more money into it since then, and I, for one, won't rest easy until her house is sold.
Is that a car coming down the street?
Maybe it's someone coming to look at the house? Is it slowing down?
It has to slow down. We're on a dead-end street.
We'll never be able to tell who's in the car unless they get out.
What do they look like?
They're turning into Miss Redmond's driveway.
Oh, can you see their faces?
What are they doing now? Oh, I wish I had my glasses with me.
They're backing out. They're just going to turn around.
You all sound so worried. Just because a house has been put up for sale, someone might buy it and fix it up.
And someone might buy it and let it run down.
Don't you understand? They're only asking 17,000.
And we'll probably take 16,000.
and might take 15,000.
Almost anyone
From almost anywhere in the city.
could afford to buy it.
The law says that anyone can buy that house.
Well, I'm going to keep my doors locked just in case. You never can tell who'll be looking at that house when she's only asking $17,000.
I don't think that she realizes what she's up against.
Yes, and if someone wanted to buy it, and if for personality reasons she didn't want to sell, she could really get in trouble.
She might be taken to court.
They could easily take advantage of a nice old lady.
We'll simply watch and see who looks at the house and make sure that any undesirables don't feel welcome.
We should give Miss Redmond a word of caution. I'm sure she doesn't realize what could happen.
How can you tell just from looking at people if they're undesirable?
Are you really that dumb? Or are you trying to make trouble?
Oh, now I understand. I'd better go home. I just remembered I have a cake in the oven. See you later.
Well, I wonder what's wrong with her.
She certainly sounds peculiar.
She seemed to disagree with everything we said.
I don't believe she's as smart as I thought she was.
The back door of Miss Redmond's house. Kathy knocks.
Good morning, Kathy.
Miss Redmond, I have to see you right away.
Won't you come in?
Thank you. I thought that I should warn you that there's going to be trouble in the neighborhood.
Oh dear, what's the matter?
It's your house, Miss Redmond, and the sign.
But how did you know about it?
We all saw the salesman put it up this morning.
Oh, you mean their sign? We misunderstood each other. I thought you were talking about my sign. How do you like it?
Welcome. It says welcome. Who's welcome?
Anyone who needs this house.
Anyone?
Anyone.
Where are you going to put it?
Well, I thought I would put it up next to the sale sign.
You wouldn't.
That's why I made it.
Well, not that I mind, Miss Redmond, but the rest of the ladies on the Oval are going to be very upset. If you put that sign out there, the minute your back is turned, they'll take it away.
Well, then I'll stand and hold it. They can't carry me away.
You're going to stand there with the sign? You're going to pick it.
Yes, let's call it that.
Oh dear.
You really think they'll be upset?
I know they will.
Well, then wait until they see the ad in the paper.
Your ad in the paper? Doesn't the real estate company usually take care of that?
Well, they wouldn't put in what I wanted, and so I ran my own ad.
Oh dear. Well, you'll have to excuse me. I just remembered I left a cake in the oven. See you later.
Turn to the real estate ads.
I am.
No, the for sale column. You have the east side, it's the west side.
It might not even be listed.
Oh, hey, here it is. Comfortable home for family, 1680 Azalea Oval, $17,000. Welcome all.
Welcome all? What a crazy ad.
She must be out of her mind.
Why did she have to put welcome all in the ad?
And why did she have to put the all in capital letters?
What does she have against us?
This is the first brave thing I've ever done in my whole life. I'm certainly enjoying it. I just hope that I survive.
Here comes another car down the street.
I wonder if it's for the house.
Is it an old rundown car?
It's just a milk truck. It's ridiculous for us to be getting all upset. She's not going to sell that house today.
You're right, June. I'm going to go home. My dishes are still in the sink.
I'm gonna go too. I haven't done a thing this morning. My beds aren't even made.
Well, I know you two. You want to walk by the house. Well, I'm going to. We'll all go together.
Lucy pantomimes opening the front door. She sees Miss Redmond walking up and down with her son. She is speechless for a second and then slams the door and says,
You'll never believe it.
What's wrong? What's the matter?
What's wrong?
Never believe what?
Pickets. There are pickets in front of her house.
Pickets? How many? What do they look like?
Ethel quickly opens the door and says,
Lucy, it's just Miss Red. Welcome.
she slams the door.
What does she think she's doing?
Causing trouble.
How can she cause trouble? No one will see her. It's a dead-end street.
How can you say that after you read her ad in the paper?
I'm gonna go home and lock my doors.
You left your doors open.
I never will again. Do you mind if I go out the back way, June?
I think it would be better if you did.
Dorothy leaves by the back door. She hurries across the stage, and just before she exits, she pantomimes locking and bolting a door several times.
Oh, there's another car coming down the street.
It's a station wagon.
That doesn't mean anything anymore.
It's turning into her driveway.
Can you see their faces?
They're stopping back in between the houses.
We don't have a window on that side of the house.
They must be going in the back door.
Miss Redmond turns and goes up her front walk and into her house.
How many were in the car?
I couldn't tell.
Maybe it's friends visiting.
They couldn't be. I never saw that car before.
It might be someone from the real estate company.
June, don't you go crazy living in a house with no windows on one side?
Miss Redmond's house was sold this morning at 10:30 a.m. to a Mr. and Mrs. George Washington.
You'll all have to excuse me. I just remembered that I have a cake in the oven. I'll see you later, I think.
I better keep my doors locked just in case.
Dorothy pantomimes
Never
locking and bolting.
Can't tell about people like that. They might be from Mount Vernon, but I doubt it.
I'll tell you frankly, June, I never would have thought this of Miss Redmond.
Well, I never knew her very well.
She had me fooled, all right. She certainly doesn't look like a communist.
Lucy opens the front door and starts to exit when she hears Peggy calling her.
Lucy, Lucy,
Yeah.
is it true that Miss Redmond's house has been sold?
That's what the sign says.
I didn't even know it was up for sale.
It all happened so very fast.
Do you know who bought it?
You'll have to excuse me. I think I smell something burning.
Peggy stands for a moment watching her, and then she too exits. A phone rings and June answers.
Hello. Hello, Marge. Yes, her house sold this morning. No, I don't know any of the particulars.
That's right, Clarice. No, I haven't met them yet.
Their name is Washington. Yes, that's right. Like the president.
I'm sorry, but you have the wrong number.
Yes, this is the principal of Calvin Coolidge Elementary School. No, that statement is not correct. There are no plans to bus our children to other schools.
I'm sorry, but I told you that you have the wrong number. Oh, Frank, it's you. No, dear, you don't have to come home.
Yes. Yes, Mother, we're all right. There's no need to worry about the children. Mother, it'll be 10 years before they even think about getting married.
We're not doing another thing to our house. Well, I believe in it too, but we have to protect our investment.
No, Marie, I'm not making any judgments. Well, that's just fine, Marie, but none of my best friends are.
Hello?
June,
Yes.
this is Emily Redmond.
Oh, yes, Miss Redmond.
I have some news for you, June.
Oh,
I sold my house this morning.
well, that is news.
The first people who looked at it bought it.
Imagine that.
You're going to like these people, June.
We're all anxious to see them, Miss Redmond.
There's another reason that I called. I think it would be nice if you would meet Mrs. Washington before she moves into the house.
Mrs. Washington?
I'd like you and the other ladies on Azalea Oval to come to a tea tomorrow afternoon at 2.
It doesn't matter to me what the rest of you do. I'm not going.
I have an appointment with the foot doctor.
Can't you change it?
Oh, Miss Molly, I'd give her a permanent.
You just gave her one last week.
We must present a solid front. I'm not going, and I don't think anyone else should go either. Miss Redmond is the type of person who insists on forcing her opinions on the entire neighborhood.
Frank and I talked it over, and he thought.
I really do have an appointment with the foot doctor.
Some people spend their whole lives trying to convert the world to their harebrained ideas. If she would only have asked me, I could have told her, oil and water do not mix.
Frank and I think that
If God had meant for men to fly, he would have given them wings.
No, I don't believe that. The question is simply, are we going too fast?
That is exactly the point. No one likes to be pushed, and I feel that Miss Redmond is pushing us.
Exactly. It's not that I basically disagree with her. What I don't like is her methods and her timing.
You're right. The timing was bad, really bad. I think you'll find that people will not panic if the timing is good.
That's right. People are basically decent.
I believe that. There's not one of us in this room who would do a mean thing on purpose.
Frank and I thought that
What did you and Frank think?
Well, Frank and I thought that we should broaden our horizons.
And what, may I ask, does that mean?
Well, now, don't get all mad at me, but Frank and I decided that I should go to the tea.
Now, why would we get mad at you?
Really, Kathy, that's an odd thing to say.
Why should we mind if you go? I'd go too, but I don't like the idea of being a hypocrite.
Did it ever occur to you that these people might be very nice?
That has absolutely nothing to do with it. The point is that they have been forced upon us. But I'll tell you one thing right now. I'm not letting you go to that tea by yourself. There's no telling what you might say.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Lucy. I think I'll go too. I can't bear the thought of having a complete stranger living down the street.
I don't mind going if I don't have to pretend I'm happy about the situation.
Well, if you're going, I'm going too. After all, I was the first one to be invited. We are at the tea.
Miss Redmond's in the kitchen.
We're at a place in our lives.
Where we never thought we'd be. Here at a tea.
A welcoming tea.
Someone who isn't welcome.
Shh, Miss Redmond's coming. She'll hear you.
Our guest of honor should be here very soon. I'll set this tray down on the table. June, would you pour, please?
I'd be happy to pour, Miss Redmond.
I have a few things in the oven, if you'll excuse me for a moment.
No,
Yes.
Don't worry about us.
I'm sure that it will be a lovely tea.
The muffins do smell good.
And I see orange and nut bread.
What are you going to say when she comes out?
We talk about.
I don't think I locked my doors.
Don't you dare move from that chair, Dorothy.
My stomach is feeling a little upset.
Think I left a cake in the oven.
You both stay where you are.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be a lovely tea.
With homemade jam on the muffins.
And cream cheese on the orange and nut bread.
With the beautiful silver service.
I wish she'd come if she's coming.
Maybe she changed her mind.
Might have thought it over and decided against the house.
Maybe the deal isn't going to go through.
Oh, dear Lord, don't let the deal go through.
Dear Lord.
Lord, don't let them get the money.
Oh, Lord.
Keep them out of this house.
Oh,
Man.
A doorbell rings and Miss Redmond enters.
That must be Mrs. Washington now. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. Mrs. Washington, it's good to see you again. Everyone is here.
I hope I'm not late.
Not at all. Everyone else was early. Come right in. Mrs. Washington, I'd like to introduce you to a few of the ladies in our neighborhood. I won't bother with last names if that's all right. If you don't mind.
Not at all.
I'm sure the ladies here won't mind. I'm sorry, I just realized I don't know your first name.
Well, it's not Martha.
I was just going to say that. Can you believe it? I was just going to say, I bet it isn't Martha.
My name is Lucy.
For heaven's sakes, that's my name. Well, we'll just have to be Lucy W. and Lucy B. The B is for Bert, another old American.
Would you continue with the introductions, Lucy? Lucy B. And I'll pour the tea. June, are you going to help me pour?
I'll be right there. I'm June. I live right next door. I can't tell you how delighted we are to have you as a neighbor. We do have fun here on the Oval.
Thank you, June. I love this house. It's only been ours for a short time, but we have great plans for it.
Oh, and this is Dorothy. She lives down on the corner.
Milk or lemon, Ethel?
Lemon, please.
I can't tell you how glad I am to meet you, Lucy. Oh, Lucy W. I love orange nut bread. As a matter of fact, Miss Redmond,
You call me Emily. Please, everyone, call me Emily.
Why, thank you, Emily. I was going to say, I love tea. Milk and sugar, please.
And this is the youngest of us, Kathy.
I'm very glad to meet you, Lucy W. I live on the other side of your new house.
Oh, well, then we'll be seeing a great deal of each other.
I hate to say this, but Frank is going to be terribly disappointed.
And this, Lucy W., is Ethel. Ethel lives 2 houses down past June. I live between June and Ethel.
I'm delighted to meet you, Lucy.
May I get you some tea?
Yes, thank you. Lemon and 1 lump of sugar.
Won't you sit down?
Thank you, Ethel.
Tell me, Lucy, were you born in Cleveland? George and Lucy Washington were born in Columbus, Ohio. They grew up there and both graduated from Ohio State University. They were married the next year. Lucy taught school for 2 years before their first child was born, a son, now attending college. They have 3 daughters, age 16, 14, and 10. George works for the Standard Steel. He makes frequent trips to New York City, where he is at the present. They have just been transferred to Cleveland from Columbus. Oh, it's nice talking with you, Lucy W.
And I've enjoyed you too, Ethel.
If you've just been transferred here, you don't know the city. We'll have to show you around.
I would appreciate the help finding things.
You just let us know if you need help in any way.
You're all extremely kind.
Wait till my girls find out that you have a son in college. Emily, this is delightful tea.
Why, thank you, Dorothy.
You know, Lucy, I have something to tell you. It's so preposterous. You won't believe it. I mean, we thought that.
Lucy, I don't think you should.
Oh, don't be silly, Kathy. There's no harm in telling her.
Telling me what?
I think Kathy's right, Lucy. People have different feelings about.
It's just among us. Go on, tell her.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm sure that you won't be offended, or I wouldn't tell you. The house went up for sale, and we saw Miss read Emily's ad in the paper. And well, you know how things are these days. You never can tell. And when we heard your name, we thought we thought that you were.
Lucy, we are.
That's ridiculous. How could you be?
It's very easy. My husband and I are both. Just a little bit.
Both of you? Are you
Both.
sure?
Oh, we're quite sure.
But you don't look.
That doesn't make any difference, does it?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It's not fair.
How do you mean that, Lucy B? It's not fair for you, or it's not fair for me?
Thank you so much. Let's come on and take a Zoom curtain call, and just tremendous thanks to all of our actresses. So grateful to all of you and your magnificent talents. I thank you so much for your time and energy. And if our Zoom audience could applaud, I'm sure that they would be. So what a weird thing to do with Zoom. So anyway, thank you so much. And with limited time, I would like to invite Terrence Range, who's the COO and Director of Development at Open Communities, to just share a bit about the organization before we head into our panel discussion. Terrence, can you, or Greg, can you help him get on here? Hey. Let's see. There you go, Terrence.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, thanks to the cast and thank you, Nikki. I got to admit, I'm inspired so much so that if things don't work out with Open Communities, I'm just going to go to Hollywood and become the next Denzel Washington.
Awesome.
But no, thanks so much. I'll be brief, and I just want to share three important things about the work that we're doing, why it's relevant for today, and how folks can help and get involved with open community. So as Nikki mentioned, my name is Terrence Range. I'm the COO and Director of Development for Open Communities. We're a social justice organization based out of Evanston with historical roots focused on fair housing. And much of our work is born out of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And so our mission and organizational purposes are to educate, advocate, and promote fair and equitable housing through activism and strategic community-based programs. And for us, our objectives are extremely clear. We think that, quality housing is a human right and fair housing is the law. And so we provide free services for our clients. And that's all around fighting for housing and fighting for housing justice in all its forms through our two signature programs, which are housing counseling and fair housing testing and enforcement. Our Director of Fair Housing, Chris Grillman, is on today's virtual panel, and so you'll hear from him in a second. Our other Director of Housing Counseling, Jasmine Hatcher, can't be with us today, but she has subject matter expertise in the foreclosure and housing counseling space, and she's done an excellent job in partnering with lenders and other funders to provide support for first-time home buyers and folks navigating the housing spaces. And so our services cover Northern Chicago, and that includes Lake, Cook, and DuPage counties. And at the end of the day, we just want to provide support for folks navigating foreclosure, eviction, and provide that awareness and education and transparency around fair housing laws that impact communities and people. And so lastly, the best way to get involved are three ways you can do that. My favorite way is to donate. So you can donate. You can visit our website to learn more about the work that we're doing. It's www.open-communities.org. I'm sure we can share more information after the call and the panel. The second is to volunteer. We've been very fortunate to work with some incredible experts in both the nonprofit and corporate space. And so we want to enhance our impact. And so you might be able to help us leverage that through your strategic insight, your guidance, your collaborative expertise, so that we can continue helping our clients who seek our services. And we want to be able to leverage your insights, your lived experiences, and your histories. And so we welcome your collaboration through that volunteer lens. And the last area and way that you can get involved to support our work is just spreading the word. It's about awareness for us, especially now in the digital era. And so awareness is critical. That's how we continue to reach the homes, the hearts, and the minds of the clients and supporters that are looking for ways to get involved and to end housing discrimination and injustice. And so, we're extremely thankful to be involved in today's discussion. I'm certain this will be the first of many partnerships and initiatives where you'll see open communities on the forefront and in the communities and on the front lines and fighting for the voices that matter in the communities, all in the name of advocacy and social justice. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Terrence. And now I'd just like to introduce the members of our panel today. We have three, and then our actresses will also participate in the discussion. And Terrence, I welcome you back into that as much as you want to be. So Ellen Burton is the author of Amazon bestseller, The Civility Project, How to Build a Culture of Reverence to Improve Wellness, Productivity, and Profit. She is also the CEO of E.J. Burton and Associates, an executive coach, speaker, and diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. And she facilitates learning for international corporations with integrity, humor, compassion, enthusiasm, and an intense respect for adult learning. Our other panelist today is Chris Railman, Director of Fair Housing at Open Communities, and he received his JD and his BA from Loyola University in Chicago. After law school, Chris worked and pursued his interest in civil rights litigation by working with the Greater New Orleans Fair Housing Action Center and the Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office and private civil rights attorneys in the Chicago area. Chris's legal acumen and keen eye for investigating wrongdoing makes him a potent dual threat for leading the Fair Housing Enforcement Program. And our last panelist is Dina Tassini. She is the Director of Community Development for the town of Tiburon. And she has also served as Community Development Director at the City of Dixon, Planning Manager at the City of Vallejo, Deputy Director of Planning and Economic Development at the City of Martinez, Principal at Tassini and Associates, Planning Manager at Lennar Development Company, and Deputy Director Base Reuse for the City of Alameda. and she holds a Master of Architecture and Urban Planning from UCLA and a BA in Urban Studies and Planning from UC San Diego and Cal Poly, respectively. So welcome, panelists. Thank you so much for being here. So appreciate your time. And just want to start out with a general question for all of you. This play was written in 1968, and 52 years later, it remains just as topical. And I'm wondering how each of you might speak to that from both your personal and professional standpoints. So anybody want to take a stab at that to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to start.
Great.
I actually am home in Ann Arbor, and my mother tells a story about how when they were looking for a place to live, their realtor, who was a Jewish man, actually brought them to a neighborhood where they had no business being, according to him. And he didn't care, and he was looking to break down barriers. And so we ended up in this white neighborhood. And the story just really hits me personally because of that. My mother is 91. They've been in this house since 1970. And it was interesting to grow up in a neighborhood where I'm sure that what happened in the play is a lot of what happened here. And as a kid, kind of didn't get it. I'm sure as an adult, she probably ran across a lot of the same attitude as the actors. And by the way, thank you for the actors. Great job, and the direction, that was wonderful. So that's my personal take on it, and I'll let others share on it too. It's close. It's not ancient history. I guess that's my take.
So I can add from it. First of all, thank you. That was really great. It's something different for me. A wonderful way in which to bring this platform forward. I hear about it in a very different manner. I've been working in local government and development for a really long time. And this comes up in various ways where there's these keywords that people use and they continue to use. And as we try to develop a more dense kind of environment, especially within the urban core, to look at the affordable housing and how this whole landscape has really changed with housing, especially in the Bay Area, as people are losing their jobs and losing their homes. And we have tents everywhere, and people complain about those people. And they kind of mask it in this progressive language of, oh, those poor people. But when you go ahead with a development like I work on all the time and try to create some density and some affordability components within it, those are the first people that come out and say, there's too much traffic, there's too much noise, there's too much, the environment's going to be hurt. And no matter how many times you fight them, we end up in court because of it. But the reality really is they don't want those people here. I have an empty lot across the street from my house. There was a gentleman that wanted to do tiny homes. A woman across the way from me came over and said, can't you do something for us? You're a planner, you can stop this. And I said, I don't have a problem with it. I think it would be a great way to do infill development. That woman has never spoken to me again. So this happens time and time again. And it's unfortunate because land use wasn't supposed to be that way, but I think what we've done is create separateness and privilege through the zoning process and through land use. So I'm hoping we can change some of that, especially now when we're going to be pressured to do so.
So I'll go ahead and chime in from a professional angle. This play is really insightful because it really shows how discrimination is occurring today. All of the women in the play were kind of skirting the issue throughout the play. They weren't really saying their prejudice outright, even though they had innuendo. They didn't come forward and say, we don't want Black people in our cul-de-sac. And that's how discrimination is today. We don't always find overt evidence of discrimination. We don't have a smoking gun where we have a landlord writing out some sort of email saying, I don't want you people here. It's always done with not always, but for the most part, it's done with a smile and a handshake, and then just forgetting that person even came and saw the apartment, just treating them a little differently, telling them one thing, but telling the other possibly white person looking at the apartment something else. So the play is very topical because it shows that people still have their prejudice hidden and are not discriminating as blatantly as some people might think. So that's how discrimination is still occurring today.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on that? Oh, and by the way, audience, our chat room is open. So if you have questions or anything you want to share in there, please go ahead and put it in. So, this, when I wrote this question out, I was thinking, oh, sounds so like, I don't know, naive. And so I want to piggyback it with another question that regardless of the passage of the civil rights laws, including the Fair Housing Act of 1968, injustice continues in our systems as well as in the minds and hearts of individuals. Are we stuck in a perpetual cycle? Is there a way to break it? And if so, how? And then I want to put this in here. The play is set on a cul-de-sac, a dead end street in a suburban Midwest neighborhood. There's a lot to unpack right there, if you ask me. And does anyone care to take a stab at that? Is this a dead end situation? What?
No, it's not, but it's an uncomfortable one for most people. I think we're going to have to be very uncomfortable before we get okay. And that meaning that we're going to have to be forced to understand that our privilege, or, I'm white, so I have a lot of privilege. Our privilege is what's causing this problem. So the fact that I can say, oh, I don't want that person living over there, we're going to have those hard conversations. And I think this kind of discourse, and also as we educate our younger people, I think we're going to have a really hard conversation about it. And I think the ugliness that we have seen in this country for the last 4 years may actually give us some hope. Maybe I'm just being naive, but I really feel like just looking at the numbers of people that are voting, looking at the numbers of people who care, looking at what's happening out in the streets, that maybe we'll actually be forced to do something. I don't think it's just going to happen because we're going to be nice, because the system isn't set up that way. I think it's going to get so uncomfortable we're going to have to do anything about it. And I don't know how many of you people have been to the Bay Area since the pandemic, but it's dead. There is nothing happening except for tents on the street. And that's all people talk about. And as hard as it is to look at that, there is some promise to that we're going to have to pass some types of ways in which we force people to provide housing. And I mean developers in particular, because we're not doing that. So I just think it's going to be really an uncomfortable 10 years, but I think it's going to happen. I don't think as a human race, we can continue to be so inhumane.
I agree with you. The work I do is mostly with C-suite executives and one level down, and education piece is going to be huge. I too am, I have very mixed feelings about leadership. I think, first of all, this has been a terrible example of strong leadership out of Washington. Secondly, I'm very grateful for the role that Donald Trump has played in turning on the light. I think that it's essential that we can't heal this up unless we can see it, right? And so now we can see it. And for whatever reason, he's given permission for people to own their beliefs a little more publicly, which means that we can have the conversation now. We couldn't have the conversation before because if I hear one more time, then we have a Black president, I thought this was over. So now we're getting past that that blind spot, and we have an opportunity to educate, right? That'll make the difference, I think. I live in Evanston. I think we live in a bubble there, most of us, in a lot of ways. And so we don't see what we don't want to see. It's not like these issues aren't present. I appreciate your sharing, Terrence, and talking about your organization, really powerful things that you all do, because we only see what we want to see. And now it's so loud that hopefully this is a tipping point in all areas, especially housing, because it's so critical and also really loud right now. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
And I agree with both Dina and Ellen. I think
Yeah, will
really
make
one
the
of
difference.
I think the key to this, to trying to solve to solve all of these inequities in our society really does come down to education. And one of the things that I really believe in, and I really try to push with my the educational programs that I run, is I try to believe in the power of human empathy. I want to, the people that I'm educating, I try to inform, to show them the effects of discrimination, how people feel dejected from society, how they're not a part of their neighborhoods. Whenever we have clients who clearly have been discriminated against, they not only just feel sad and upset, but it also manifests in physical ways. People experience anxiety. They can't sleep. I have one client who she couldn't work for a while because she was discriminated against repeatedly throughout the northern suburbs of Chicago. So when we can show the effects of discrimination, I think that people will be a bit more empathetic and maybe be more apt to change their behavior and recognize their own biases.
Anyone else want to speak to that?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say thank you for the work you guys are doing. It's as you've said, it's such a tough thing to acknowledge how painfully short we've come in the last 50 years. And, you know, my father was an Evanstonian, never really talked about it with his children, about the redlining and I mean, I didn't even know this. I was never educated about it. And I live in a community that, as Ellen said, is its own bubble. And and obviously I was in one bubble and not seeing what was really happening in this city, you know. And it's painful, but I also agree that you have to go rock bottom in order for something to really shift. And that's my hope. So I so appreciate everybody who's here to talk about it.
And, you know, hitting on your point about education, I think it's been a real eye-opener for a lot of people to understand that we really have never been educated about what has happened to people in this country. It's like we get this glossed over look about how wonderful we are as Americans. And then you start reading, you're like, wow, this is really embarrassing. How come we never learned that when we were in school? Why didn't they tell me about that? How come, you know, like, and a lot of Donald Trump's era has forced me to do a lot more reading and to educate myself in a different manner than I was before, as well as two 20-year-old children who keep reminding me about, you know, how bad everything is and how I screwed everything up as the baby boomer. And I keep telling them, you know, like I went to school and in a segregated place, they bussed when I was going to school. You have no idea. Like, this is only a short period of time. I'm not this really old person. I'm old, but not that old. And, you know, they can't quite put their head around it that the paradigm that I had at school is very different than what we should be doing for our children and children's children. So I do really want to believe in the human race. And I think this housing issue and the people on the streets and just the despair that we have in this country is actually a good turning point. I know that sounds really weird because there's a lot of people in pain, but it brings us all here who probably wouldn't have been here 4 years ago. Honestly, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. So I think it's really important. And I will donate to Terrence. And I think you're doing great work. I looked at your site beforehand. So thank you very much for your work.
You know, the dialogue in the play, we kind of touched on this, and Chris touched on this. The dialogue in the play is full of euphemisms, and nothing is ever specifically said about race or color. And I'm wondering what this brought up for you or made you think about, and perhaps the actresses can also speak to this as well, because that must have been uncomfortable.
I can say something. It was a little bit uncomfortable. Just the language in the play is kind of cringy. And when I heard dead end, I saw in my head there's nowhere for a Black person or a person of color to succeed. That's what I got by dead end. So yes, but it is a very good way to open up people's eyes. I don't know. I just really appreciate being a part of this.
Glad you were. Laura.
Yeah, this idea of being an actor and having to say uncomfortable things in your character, right? I, right now, in the past 2 or 3 years, I've been cast a lot as the Karen. So I've had to sort of own that and accept that and realize that I'm actually serving a purpose here. Like they need something to play off of for what we're trying to say, right? So I don't find it uncomfortable anymore. I find it necessary in an artistic piece. But having said that, I have to check my privilege all the time around it. Like, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, do it.
Thanks. What was it like watching it and hearing that, panelists?
Oh, I too. I love the idea of the cul-de-sac. Where everything has gotten stuck in there, like time has gone on. And these people have degrees and their kids are having degrees, like things have changed. This isn't the, 50s, right? It's 20 something years later. But they are stuck in that cul-de-sac of beliefs. I also like the metaphor of I'm going to come out of my life for a minute and it's uncomfortable. Now I have to go back because I have a cake in the oven or I have dishes to do. I have a bed to make. I'm trying to think of the last time I made my bed. This thing I can come out for a second, but I must go back. I cannot stay here. This is pushing against all the paradigms that I was promised, the paradigms that I grew up with. This is a time too, 58 or whatever, and I wasn't born yet, but when people were still whispering cancer, they were whispering divorce. If even anybody told people they were divorced, things were starting to break up. Like fantasies were starting to break up, sort of like now. The pain of it's the matrix, right? It's like, don't take the blue pill, right? Because it is not going to be comfortable and you're not going to have pretty clothes. Like it's going to change. And that's when I read through the first time, and then of course seeing these great actors, I'm like, man, the pain of letting go of fantasy, how hard we all try to hold on to these the fantasy to stay comfortable. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay warm. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay comfortable. But they could only come, they could only pull the blankets down for a minute and then they had to go back. And, who can't relate to that? Like, I would say that those of us on the other side of it, I don't even know if there's another side of it, non-white, need to kind of have some compassion for that as things are changing right now, and not be on this side of like, this is what justice looks like and everybody else is wrong. But we could all stand to have a little compassion about, this 70-year-old white guy in Alabama who's, looking at the world in a different way and really uncomfortable, like there's a place for compassion there as opposed to judgment.
Yeah, thanks. Jill?
I felt the hero of the play was Mrs. Redmond, and I wanted to play that part because I'm not really an actress and I really got a stomach ache playing the part that I played. But I loved her attitude and her whispering to the camera, this is the first time I've done that, because I do feel like there's a lot of people coming around and feeling that way too. So I thought that was a really redeeming part of it. So
yeah,
I do have a stomach ache. So.
Yeah.
And actually,
I grew up on a cul-de-sac. in the suburban community. I know because I'm older than all you people, I feel like I had a party line. So that's how we found out what was happening in the neighborhood. And we would all sneak, the kids would all sneak and get on the line just when, Mrs. Gorski across the street was the biggest gossip. And we had a Chinese family move in when I was probably 7. And my parents are not, I'm first generation American. So they were like, oh, look at this. We got other people on the block who aren't just white people with 15 children, because it was a very Catholic community. And there goes my prejudice. And we walked down and gave them food, and Mrs. Gorski was very upset with my mother. So I still remember that kind of close-knit running away, going, we have a term for it in planning, which is white flight, and the zoning created for it, from all single family homes, big shopping centers, people commuting into the city. And that's how people lived in order to avoid those people that we moved away from. And so it just feels like it still occurs and it's there. I don't know how, I think we're just gonna have to have more of these plays so people listen and hear.
So I think one thing that just kind of hit me is that these women in the play are able to really kind of have their cake and eat it too when it comes to their privilege. By not mentioning race or color, by kind of skirting the issue, they don't have to be uncomfortable. They don't have to put forth their own discriminatory reasons or their prejudice. But they're still able to kind of discriminate. They're still able to be prejudiced, but they don't have to be uncomfortable when they're doing it by putting a name or a face or a color to their discrimination. So that just really strikes me that these women are that privileged so that they can have their cake in discriminating, but they can also eat it too by not being uncomfortable about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just going to go into the chat for a minute because I don't want to disclude the people in the audience, but I'm just going to go backwards. I also felt like the script was written in a way that it could have been any minority since they never said the word. And then I also noticed when the neighbors believed Mrs. Washington was white, they tried immediately to enlist her in the racist club of the cul-de-sac, perpetuating the cycle. And you would have a hard time finding an empty lot in San Diego for $170,000, which somebody was talking about the equivalent of the cost of the house. I think they said was $120,000 today from $117,000 in 1969. In San Diego, developers are supposed to provide 10% affordable housing, but they can buy out for $10 and change a square foot. So that's what happens here. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that perpetuating the cycle, as David just mentioned in the comments, is I've read this play over and over, and I went through at one point and just kept marking all the repetition of lines, right? The cake in the oven and locking the doors, and just the repetition that the women just kept saying over and over. There's a sign, there's pickets, everything. And it just made me think, like, we spin in this cycle over and over. It's same, different decade, and, as was talked about, maybe because of this time that we're in, this last, it started way before Trump, but started in 2008, I believe, 2009, the day Obama got in office. But this cycle is just continuing to go, and now it's just out in the open. We can't go back. And yet here we are, even after everything that happened since George Floyd and BLM, this is still happening. It's like, I kind of thought maybe we'd have some kind of reckoning, but I haven't seen that yet, so I'm wondering if anyone wants to speak to that.
Nikki, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, I know you have to go. Linda has another show to work on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Stay well.
You too.
Thank you.
So anybody want to speak to the cycle of repetition? Or how we exhaust that repetition? Because I know a lot of us are exhausted and it's not the time to stop.
Talking too much, but it just is so exciting. The repetition I thought was a way in which they calm themselves down. Like, I'm gonna lock the door, have a cake, I'm gonna do this. It's sort of like everything's just gonna be okay. And that sort of leads back to what I was saying before. I believe in it's sort of human nature. You have to get to a crisis point before most people do anything. Because we all go along thinking everything's really fine until, you know, those people make us have to think about how it's not okay, because we have all this ability to just, I'm talking about a we in the sense that white people have this ability to just go along and say, it's going to be okay. I'm living, I'm safe. I'm good. My family's good. Oh, those people, they have to worry about themselves. Oh, we don't, you know. And so until things really are in your face. And I think that's when it's unfortunate, but I think that's when it gets uncomfortable and then people do something. So I think I like that part of it. It was kind of, I'm gonna lock the door. I've got this, I've got that. It's sort of to put everything else out of the mind. And then you go back to normalcy and you don't have to think about how screwed up everything is. So.
Brianna.
Unfortunately, this reminds me of some of my family. Being biracial, I can see both sides a lot of the time. And every time this topic or any topic about privilege or anything like that comes up, it's always, oh, I don't have time to think about that or research that. I've got X, Y, and Z problems. But you've had these 3 problems for maybe 20 years. It's always the same 3 problems. And I think it's a cover to like a sort of safety. I saw someone in the chat. There's also safety in repetition because it's familiar and comfortable. I think they're using that as safety and comfort to not have to address the real issues.
Yeah, thanks. I also am interested in, there's 3 women who dissent, I'm just giving a little nod to RBG, but who dissent in varying degrees from the others on Azalea Oval. And obviously Miss Redmond is clear. Kathy has a little bit going on there. And then just a little bit is June. She kind of has some kind of notion that at least maybe we shouldn't go there, right? And so I'm wondering if there's anything that we might take away from that at all.
I found the character of Kathy interesting when she and her husband would have these conversations where this is wrong, we need to step up and say something, and then she actually couldn't. And I think that this summer, that with the Black Lives Matter movement happening, I think we white people kind of came up against that, like, oh, I gotta say something, I gotta actually say it out loud. Oh God, here goes, you know. That's our challenge. I think the white people challenge is to actually say it out loud.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, when I work with executives and we talk about the stages from anti-racist to allyship, and it seems like all these women are on those stages. From saying, you know, from Kathy saying, you know, my husband and I are talking about not being racist. You know, she's like there, and then everybody else is kind of on the graduated steps from racist And I love the comment earlier about not wanting to acknowledge it by not actually using the words. It's like everybody's a little gradated towards allyship. And I love that what the comment that Ethel said, you can't, that she couldn't say it. She couldn't speak up for it, which is, I think, going to make the difference. There's this, everyone keeps talking about like, what's the difference between this and Vietnam protest, right? For one thing, in my mind, this isn't, the protesters aren't just 16 to 25-year-olds, and we have this beautiful sad period where there's a lot of unemployment, so people have time to sit still and really have this marinate with them. So I love the gradation of the parts of people getting towards the future, getting towards where they're going. But I think that's what we're seeing right now as well. There are a lot of people going, I'm not a racist, which is not the same as I stand for justice. And then what does that look like? I stand for equality. What does that look like? Where are you? And I get questions all the time from these professionals. What should I do? And I tell them, I think you should sit still and wait for an inspired action. And if the inspired action is to march, then march. And if it's just write a check, for God's sakes, write a check. You know what I mean? Like, do what feels right in the moment. And it's probably not going to be once. And but if you are for equal justice, how will I know? Right? That's kind of Kathy's situation right now. I used to date this guy who would say, I would say, what about so-and-so? Do you think they have integrity? And he goes, watch their feet. And I'm like, what does that mean? And, but it's, he was saying like, it's not about what they say. It's about what you see them do. And so that seems like that also shows up in gradations through these women as well. But that's our challenge right now, right? Yeah.
Thank you. I think what I saw with June, because I played June, was she went back and forth. With the tide, it was all of a sudden, she's a dear person. And then it was, I never really liked her in the first place. And I think she was going with the tide. So when Kathy said, well, we're going to go ahead and go, then she was, then everybody came on board with that too. And I think to take that away is the influence that we have when we speak out loud. Because for me, Kathy was a character who spoke out loud her feelings, even if it was against what everybody else was thinking. And gradually, I think June was like, well, then I'm going to, and the muffins smell good, and let's not say this out loud. So it showed that if somebody is speaking out loud, there will be people who go in that direction because instinctively they feel like that's the right thing to, or they don't want to be left behind. But I just think there's going to be both sides, and we need to speak up if we're on a side that's really important to us.
Does anybody in the audience want to speak up and share? Ask a question or put something out there? Well, I know for me that, it's really important to learn. It's really important to have knowledge. I've really been working with this a lot for myself, is gain as much knowledge as I can, because I feel like in the past couple of years, like so many people have spoken to here, is I didn't know all this. Like I grew up in a very liberal home and still didn't know all this. We weren't taught all this. And I don't think my parents even knew, so learning and knowing and trying to educate or re-educate myself has been really important. But it's, the whole term faith without works is dead, and getting into action, even if it's the smallest action, is, I think, so important for all of us, whether it's, writing postcards to get people to vote, or or, you know, attending a march or donating money or whatever it is that we can do. And this was one of the things that I felt like I could do. And then, you know, connecting with open communities was another. And I'm very excited about that, especially because I feel like it's honoring my mom, which is really, really important to me. And my mom used to go out as part of the Fair Housing Action Group. Is she would go with people. You know, there would be a call to like a person of color would go try to rent an apartment or buy a house, and they would be turned down for rent or mortgage or whatever it is. And then my mom and some other people would go out and, oh gee, well, that a place was available. Everything was there. So I'm just going to ask Chris to speak to something that Open Communities is doing, which is called testing or testers. So Chris.
Yes, thanks for that. And that's exactly what we do at Open Communities. We run a program called Fair Housing Testing, and that is really the main method in which we can investigate and fight against discrimination. Like I mentioned earlier, discrimination doesn't typically occur with a blatant call out or saying that, hi, I'm a racist. It is typically with disproportionate treatment. It's giving preferential treatment to one person as opposed to the other. And so the best way for us to find out where this is occurring is through testing. And this is where I send, I will have volunteers, people who get trained by me on how to do this. I will send 2 people out to an apartment building. If I suspect that the building is, the landlord there is discriminating on the basis of race, I'll send a person who is white, and then I will send a person who is black. And then the testers will go ahead and document their experiences for me in the form of written reports. And by looking at how each person is treated throughout the whole apartment application process, we can kind of infer whether or not discrimination is occurring. Maybe one person was told the security deposit is $1,000, where the other person was told, you know what, I'll waive the security deposit for you because you look like such a nice person. I recently had a case that one person was told that the tenants were not allowing her to see the unit because they were afraid of COVID. That's a valid reason, you'd think. But then I had a white tester call the next day, and he was ready, willing, and able to show the apartment to that tester. So this is how we really investigate instances of discrimination in today's housing market. And just my little pitch is I'm always recruiting new people to be on the front lines to fight against housing discrimination. I need people of all genders, races, religions. Everybody is very important for this fight, and anybody can be a tester. So if you'd like to join, there's a small stipend involved with the being a tester. And if you want more information, just reach out to me. My email address is Chris, CHRIS, at open-communities.org, or reach out to Nikki, or just visit our website, open-communities.org, to find out more information.
Thanks so much, Chris. And you know, I'll send a follow-up email after this so that you have all this information. And I just want to put this out there. Anybody on the panel or anybody in the cast or anybody in the audience want to speak up about anything? Have anything else you want to share? Questions you'd like to ask? Yeah, Mary.
Just as an actor, to throw this out there, what if this had been all men in the play rather than women? How different do you think it would have been in the language and how they treated the situation? Crickets, crickets.
Men, I don't know. My impulse is to think that men actually might say the words where women can't or won't.
I think it would make it more comical for sure. because men would just say the word, I think it would make it more comical. Still a good message, but
Less cake, probably.
and aprons.
More beer, more beer, less cake.
More beer, less cake.
I think it would probably be a lot more physical too, other than just the phone or the doorbell or the aprons. I think there would be a lot more space taken up, and a lot more. This is totally stereotypical, but a little bit more aggression, accelerated aggression as the play goes on. Yeah.
What if cats perform the play? Cat walk through. At any rate, I am so grateful for this experience. I'm so grateful to all of you women who came out to be part of this play and to give your time and energy and to open communities for the work you do, and to Ellen and Dina and Chris for being on this panel. Terrence, thank you so much for everything. And thank you to you, our audience, everyone who's come out today to support. We're gonna end. We're just gonna put up a slide here that will give you some action steps, which will be included in the email I send out. And I wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and vote blue. So thank you, everybody. You can, Greg, if you can allow the unmute to happen, we can have some joyful noise.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Nikki.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
Thanks, actors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Jan. Hi, Jan. Hey, Cookie.
Can't get out.
Oh, you guys were great. How terrific.
Beautiful work.
Really terrific.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Great service, Nick.
You guys were
Yeah,
amazing.
thanks so much, Nikki.
It was fantastic.
Welcome.
Thank you. That was great.
Fantastic.
Fabulous, just fabulous.
Yeah, thanks again for organizing all this, Nikki. This was awesome.
Absolutely, Chris. We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right, Nick, take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.